Welcome again to another rendition of Welcome to Fatherhood Interviews. My name is Sir Royce Briales, and I'm with my prestigious co-host, Dr. Raheem Young. How's it going, my brother?
Everything's well, man. Just gearing up for the parenting symposium we got coming up. So other than that, everything's good.
And again, that's the first and third Thursday of every month. Tune in. So look us up on any social media platform. Welcome to Fatherhood. You'll find us there. All right, and also I'm pleased to announce we have a special guest, Dennis Williams. How's it going, man?
Doing well, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. All right, so first question we normally ask Dennis is, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How many kids you got, your ages, and also what do you do for a living or for a purpose?
Okay. Again, I'm Dennis Williams. I have 3 kids, one boy and 2 girls. My eldest, his name is Matthew, and he is a vice principal at a middle school on the Big Island in Kona, and was in 2019 was Hawaii's Teacher of the Year. And then I have a daughter who's in the arts. She's 31, and my youngest is her name's Elise. She'll be 26 in 3 weeks, and she has her master's in accounting and is a CPA. And so really, as far as what I do at this point in time, the bulk of my career has been in healthcare. But at this point, because of my intense curiosity, I basically launched a software application called CashMap that is available in Apple's App Store as well as Google Play. That basically we show people how they can manage their money the way banks make money, so that it enables people, without changing their spending, they can get rid of debt in half the time, literally save thousands of dollars in interest. They have the ability of creating their own personal scenarios and see the power of compounding, so they can see firsthand how you can make money work for you to build intergenerational wealth and a legacy for your family. That in turn also you'll boost your credit score, and I've seen marriages improved over it because partners get on the same page. Yeah. And so my journey at this point is, people look at the product that I've created, they'll say, this just seems too good to be true. But banks have been using our money for years, and I'm showing people how to use the bank's money to their benefit. And so it's been an exciting journey, but that's what I'm doing now.
That's cool. So how did you get into that? I know that you said that you worked in healthcare. So how did you get into teaching people about like finances and saving money and stuff?
Well, I have an MBA in finance.
Okay.
And I have also served as fiscal officers and my first stint was at a couple of state hospitals on the island of Kauai. And then I was finance director at a small software firm here in Washington before they kicked me upstairs and made me executive VP for software development for a couple of divisions that merged. But how I got into this was when we first moved here to Washington from Hawaii. I was asked to run a small mortgage company near Seattle, and one day account manager from an Australian bank came to do some training for our loan officers, and he started his presentation with the following phrase: how would you like to show your clients how they can pay off their mortgage in half the time without changing their spending, and the interest rate doesn't matter? And I heard that, I said, something ain't right here. How is that possible? And he wasn't terribly good about explaining it, so I kind of dug into it and figured it out, and then ended up creating a solution that could be more broadly used, as well as minimizing risk to the user, and then adding the features of enabling people to kind of create a forward look as far as the impact of the way they manage their money. And so it's kind of been this journey I've been doing ever since.
What kind of conversations have you had over the years, like with your kids, about money, about how to manage money and how to make money grow in your family?
I think the first thing that it's been really important for me to share with my kids is to recognize, and there's another phrase that I use that we've been pretty mindful of, and that is small changes bring big results. And so it's not the big stuff that you do, but it's the repetitive little things that you do. From, one of the things that we required our kids growing up was that they all played music and they all had to practice every day. And so you just keep doing it day after day, and it develops self-discipline. And so money is the same way. It's a similar theme of being mindful of what's really important, and you don't want to look back and have regrets. So, and you want the ability to have independence. And the stuff you buy, don't do it because you're trying to impress somebody, but do it so that you're living the life that you want to live, and you can have the independence. And when you do that, then you will also earn respect. So yeah.
So like the discipline aspect is important in like all facets of life. Do you remember like what was the first thing you had to develop discipline around?
The thing that I most remember about what my parents had me develop discipline around was when I made the decision when I was, I'm going to say third grade. I love music. And so I took up the violin.
Okay.
And with learning to play the violin, if I didn't practice every day, I mean, if you start playing the violin, there's only one way to describe it. It's called cruel and unusual punishment. And so it's one of those things that you literally have to practice every day, because when you don't, if I skip a day, I can tell the difference. And so that's probably one of the first things that was really emphasized as far as discipline and repetition. And then the other thing that was really important that my parents taught was the value of integrity and the importance of saying, when you make a mistake, say you made a mistake. And I learned in my career, matter of fact, I've had a couple of people tell me that the reason why I got promoted and frequently put into roles that I didn't have the background for was because when I didn't know something, I said I didn't know it. And that I would give people the credit. And when I made a mistake, I'd admit I made a mistake and then make it right. And that enabled people to trust me. And so from that perspective, it actually made my position more secure. People knew that I had their back and they had my back. And it's such an easy formula, along with telling people thank you and good job. And I appreciate, I mean, this ain't rocket science, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Right. And I just saw that it's so easy. It works so well and you're transparent. I don't have to remember what I told somebody because I'm always being straight and I'm dealing with it right away. And it's counterintuitive, but where you gain respect and people's respect. And the other one is you don't grow without making mistakes. It's a part of, even though they tell us if you're a person of color, you can't make a mistake, but the reality is you gotta make mistakes because that's the only way you grow. You're not perfect. Sorry for a long answer to a short question.
Oh no, you good. You good. If you had to come up with like a Mount Rushmore of values, just just moral things. I know we have integrity is one that you said. Then uh, self-discipline. What would be like the other two things?
I think the second thing would be that we're here to contribute and to make the lives of those we come in contact with better.
Mm-hmm.
If they grow, I grow. As the Bible verse says, it's more blessed to give than receive, right? So, and that really is true. There's nothing better than, for me anyway, as far as seeing somebody be successful and grow, and just the sense of personal pride and the smile on their face that they get. So that would be another one. And then the last one for me would be treating other people the way you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And that would pretty much be it for me.
That's good stuff. I like how you said that you're better, basically I'm better.
Yep.
It was I forgot what I was watching, something on Netflix. It was a documentary about coaches. And Doc Rivers had one, and he mentioned how he came across Africans, like an African proverb, like it's called Ubuntu. That's basically the gist of it. Basically, if I make you better, then I become better myself. Mm-hmm. I've actually been kind of teaching that to my kids. Like, if they do something that's like, bad, and I ain't gonna say bad, but like, if they like maybe hit their brother or their sister or do something like talking bad about them, I'm like, that's not Ubuntu, that's Ubuntu. So I would say that's definitely something that me myself I've been implementing in my fatherhood practice with my kids myself. So I'm glad you said that.
It's pretty simple stuff, right? Yeah. If you just take this simple stuff and you just keep repeating it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not rocket science.
Yeah, my son just went in the refrigerator and got a yogurt. He got two though. He got one for him and one for his sister. I'm like, there you go. That's it. Simple. Right. Just be nice.
That's right.
That's so right. Talk about your father. Like, what was he? What is he like, or what was he like? What was it like growing up with your dad?
My dad. I didn't have the opportunity of not behaving. He was a probation officer. Oh. So for youth. And so from that perspective, my dad had an expectation that we did our best. Mm-hmm. And he also gave us the freedom to make choices. So we didn't grow up with an idea that that he had an idea what occupation we're supposed to do when we get older. He was more there to kind of give feedback. But there certainly was never, there was always an expectation that we're supposed to do our best. And in everything that we did. And so I think from that perspective, that was something that, that was instilled early on. The other thing about my dad was he was big into back to managing money. He was big into investing, owning real estate, and always making very clear, for every dollar we got, how do you want to make it stretch? What's really most important on where you want to be. So he was not one to waste money at all. And so from that perspective, and I think the other thing was, like my great grandfather, who came to this country from British Honduras. He and my great grandfather came. He left his wife and 3 daughters behind in order to kind of stake things out. And my dad did the same thing. He took the risk and left a secure role in Southern California to buy property in Hawaii and move his family there. So he understood what it meant to take risk, because he was clear on understanding what he was wanting to obtain as far as what the gain was. And so not doing things out of fear was not something that was a part of our experience.
So how old were you when you moved to Hawaii?
17 or 18 years old.
Oh. How was that for you? Was it like a culture shock?
No, actually, it wasn't. Hawaii is a very special place, in which it's this cosmopolitan mix of various ethnic groups, in which people celebrate diversity, unlike what you frequently see in the U.S. In the rest of the U.S. And so from that perspective, when we moved to Kauai, you could count the number of African Americans on one hand that were on the island. It was such a good experience that for my children, there was really no opportunity to talk about discrimination. I'll give you one example. My dad worked in the judiciary. I worked in healthcare. My mother worked in healthcare. And I remember one day, one occasion, I had gotten 2 traffic tickets in 2 days. So I showed up in court, and the place was packed. And the bailiff read the first charge, and I was just kind of thrilled that he only read one charge. But the judge was friends with my dad. And he says in Pidgin, he goes, "He get 2." I wanted to crawl under the bench. So, it was one of those things where, community all knew everybody, and just the issues of what your ethnicity was a non-issue. It truly was a matter of what your character was. And so it was a great place to be as far as, raising our kids.
That's cool.
So speaking of raising your kids, can you tell us a little bit about your experience raising your kids in Hawaii? Like, what was that like?
It was a really good experience. My parents lived a third of a mile down the same street that I lived on. My in-laws lived 20 minutes away. So my kids could hop on their bicycles and ride down to their grandparents' house. My in-laws would frequently come over and work with the kids in the garden on Sundays. And we'd go to their home on Wednesday evenings. And we'd see each other at church. And we'd be at my parents' home on Tuesday evenings. And so, the grandparents were a big part of my kids' lives. When I would have to travel, the kids would get shuttled between the grandparents. Holidays would come, and we'd go down and stake out our place at the ocean at 6 a.m. Frequently, my father-in-law would do that, and I would join him. When we got married, between the two families, at my reception, we had 800 people.
That was cool.
And for the full-on sit-down dinner, it was people had, one family on my in-laws side, they went out and caught all the fresh tuna and prepped it. So there was just basically a real strong sense of people kind of coming together and helping each other and working hard and enjoying life. And that is really kind of what the Aloha spirit is all about, is that sense of community. And that some of the divisiveness that I see here on the mainland just doesn't exist. It's a great place to be.
So Dennis, why would you leave? Especially for
I was just thinking that.
Well, one of the challenges in Hawaii was in the early years, and I was very fortunate to have been able to live there and participate in that part of the history, was sugar and pineapple were king. And so with that, mostly union jobs, wages were really good. But when the U.S. phased out farm subsidies to make up for what the European Economic Community was doing, in which they were growing too much sugar and dumping it on the market, sugar went out the door, tourism came in, it became more of a service. And with that drop, saw declining wages, and we saw a rise in families having to have multiple jobs, and multiple families living in houses, and so it started to put stresses on the family. And then so from that perspective, we recognize that it definitely was creating family strain, and so we decided that we needed to look around to see what other communities that we could find that could match that. And we were also seeing increasing challenges in the schools, and so we literally just searched across the entire U.S. and in which we discovered the Canadian community as being a great place to be. We found a great church and a great school. And so we ended up choosing Bellingham, Washington, and we would, all three of our kids would commute across the border every day for school. So all three of our kids graduated from high school in Canada. So it's definitely a different way to live, but it worked out really, really well.
Do you feel like you ever go back?
Yes. At this point, though, my youngest, of course, she's on her own now anyway, but her comment is, after you live here for a few years and the weather is just totally different, she'll say, "I'm sorry, but sun is overrated. It's and for me, if the temperature drops below 70, I'm cold."
Yeah.
But at this point, for my wife, who was also born and raised on Kauai, she's now decided that Kauai is too hot. So we're at a standoff as far as exactly where we're going to go. We live in a great neighborhood here, in which as a case in point, when COVID hit, where I was working from home, I started walking around in the neighborhood. I got to know my neighbors. It's an old neighborhood. People have these old fruit trees, got to know the neighbors. And now when I go walking in the summer, I just grab a bag and go pick fruit for free. Cherries and pears and peaches and plums. And I got one neighbor who's got 5 acres with 200 trees. And, it's pretty cool. So, nobody is very empathetic of my suffering here.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like suffering at all. It sounds like a utopia, man. You're just walking and eating from the land, man.
Yeah, it's pretty good. One of the same neighbor puts out eggs. You pick them up for free. You just go through and take a carton and return the empty ones, and he refills them.
Oh, that's cool, man. It's real cool. So, speaking to your fatherhood experience, so your kids are basically all grown, right?
Yes.
So, what phase of fatherhood did you like the most? Was it newborn, toddler, early grade school? Was it high school?
Well, I can tell you what it wasn't. Definitely not baby.
No,
No.
you like changing diapers.
I can outsource that part. That whole thing of when they first bring them home and they're waking you up and I'm a light sleeper. So you can keep that. I think I enjoyed it from when they begin to be able to express themselves and just be enamored over the simple things of life, and they enjoy being with you and just doing simple stuff. I think that's probably what I enjoyed the most. Once you hit the teenage years and you're now managing varying expectations, and depending on who the friends are, and it just becomes more complex. It wasn't unpleasant, but it's just more challenging because now somebody's they're becoming an adult and they think different than you, and so there's that balance between that freedom and at the same time recognizing they have to learn things on their own.
I know that you said that your dad allowed you and your siblings to make your own choices. Did you struggle with that with your own kids?
No, I mean, the feedback I've gotten from my kids has been, especially from my daughters, when they went to college, and they would say, it's like, number one, I would only call my kids when they were in college. We'd call them once a week. So we weren't one of these hovering parents.
Yeah.
Right. And like my father, we didn't tell them what they were supposed to study. And so my daughters would say, man, compared to my classmates, it's almost like you guys don't care. Because, some of these folks, the parents are talking to them every day and they're telling them what career they're supposed to do. And the other side of the coin is, frankly, being an African-American, when you're going to be dealing with, with some of the nonsense that goes on, you got to be tough. And so my daughters discovered that, for some of their classmates in the dorm, every little thing, they're on the phone with mommy, and my daughters are saying, boy, do my parents love us? They don't do any of this stuff with us. So yeah, I that was a bit of a surprise experience. But they're all very independent and strong opinions, and and now it's a matter of recognizing that, as I told all three of them, I'm here to help, but I certainly can't impose anything, and I gotta leave it up to you guys to decide to ask. from my counsel. Of course, as they go to college, they come home and they're excited about the stuff that they learn, and
Mhm.
and often it's stuff that we try to teach them. Of course, then the response would be, "You never told us that. I never heard that from you." And now you're in a phase that they think they're brilliant, and somehow we don't know anything, and I don't know. Somehow I kept the food, clothes on your back, and roof over your head. But I may not be that bright, but somehow I did it.
We talked about that in one of our sessions. Like, you can't be a prophet in your own home or in your own land. So
Yes, clearly,
yeah.
that's right. And nor is there any respect for your sense of humor. It's like, please don't encourage him.
The dad jokes.
Yeah, exactly. and then there's a sense of surprise. Wow, what? Well, my friends like talking to you. Well, you might want to take note.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. Exactly right. But whatever.
Did you have any differences in the way you treated your daughters versus your son, or was it pretty much uniform across the board?
Always uniform.
Yeah.
It was uniform. My youngest, she had the chore of mowing the lawn. All three of them know how to cook. They all cook really well. So none of them are going to be in a relationship because they got to depend on somebody to do something for them. They all can stand on their own 2 feet.
Have you talked to? Well, do your children have children yet? Or are you grandparents yet?
Well, let's even go further than that. Are they even seeing anybody? No.
Okay. Okay. So, like, what type of advice did you give them about like dating and going out with people?
I think the biggest thing that I have told them, especially for my daughters, is you want to be connected with somebody who has an honest sense of evaluating who you are, what you become, and they are committed to assisting you in getting there. You are not there to be second fiddle. You are looking to find a full-on partner in which it's mutually beneficial. You support them and they support you. And the other thing I guess is really important was the idea of how you manage money. It's your family. There's only one pot, and it's not based upon who makes the most money. Who makes the most money is not an issue as relates to who gets to make the decision. And for my wife, she homeschooled. So, more than one time my son would say, "Oh, Mom, let Dad do whatever he wants with his money." Nope. That's not an acceptable attitude. You're a family, you're a partner, everybody's bringing something to the table, and therefore it's our money, it's not my money. And so from that perspective, that is probably, as I moved into this area of financial management education, a lot of men do not have that attitude. And of course another thing that I did early on was my dad managed all the money in our house. And when we got married and we did have financial challenges as far as sticking to a budget, I made the choice of having my wife manage the money so that she could see what was coming in and move things into a place of again just partnership and understanding where the dollars were going, so that there's total transparency.
My next question for you, Dennis, is how are you different from your parents?
Wow,
And
that's a really good question.
how are you the same? How are you similar?
I think that I'm very consciously aware that words matter. Um, and I think that partially came from just watching arguments over money, and sometimes seeing um, that frequently there was a lack of putting yourself in your partner's shoes. And so from that perspective, the words that I use are really important, because I do believe strongly that obviously you can say you're sorry, but even if when you say you're sorry, you can't take the words back. They're out there. And so the idea being is ask yourself the question, if I was the listener, how would these words affect me if I was to hear them? And be consciously aware of the effect that you're looking at your words to have before you open your mouth. I'd have to say that was not something that was consistent that either one of my parents exercised, and it's something that I really strive hard to do. I think of ways of some similarity. Again, what I mentioned, I'm totally focused on the idea of discipline and being consciously aware of trying to do your best, and emulating that, and expecting that from every member of the family. Other area which we haven't talked about, we were actively involved in the civic issues like politics. So we would, we had friends that were, that were government officials, and so we would be out there campaigning. We understood the importance of voting. So I have never failed to vote. And that was true for my parents as well. We always voted. We may not like what happens when someone gets in office, but that's no excuse not to vote and to make your voice heard. And so that's something that, again, my kids are very active with as well.
How long have you and your wife been together?
And I think it's been all my life, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Let's see. It has been 37 years.
Oh, congratulations! When is your anniversary?
September 1.
Oh, that's cool. Just a couple of months ago. Congratulations.
And I would have to say it never gets easier.
Okay.
Just for the record, it's you're continuing having to be consciously aware of what you do and how you treat your partner.
So let me ask you, in those 37 years, what have you learned about yourself through your interaction with your wife?
Which day are you talking about?
Today.
I mean, literally, it doesn't stop.
Mm.
You every day you get up, it's repeating the same process. There's no such thing as saying, I got this nailed, I don't have to worry about it.
What do
maybe
you feel like?
maybe somebody else can do that, but I haven't figured it out yet. I'm not that bright.
Do you feel like she learned something about herself through her interaction with you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's the same.
most definitely. Yeah, I mean it's you know you come from. I mean, I give you something just so simple as when we grew up before we moved to Hawaii. Um, my dad would turn down the thermostat at night for the house to be cold. So I was used to having the blankets all tucked in, things tight. I'm not one who moves a lot. And first night we were slept in our own place. I found out I had a partner in the bed with me who don't like to be covered up, and blankets come undone, and I nicknamed her the sheet terminator. I mean, it woke me up. So, I mean, stuff that you just never would think about that, you end up having to adjust to.
Yeah.
So, I got over that. so that would be an example.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier about the importance of discipline, and what kind of techniques I'm not gonna call them tricks, but what kind of techniques did you use to discipline your children growing up?
Well, first of all, when it comes to disciplining kids, you don't discipline them the same way because the soft point for every kid is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right. So, so you kind of find out what they like to do, and then you use that as a mechanism for getting leverage. One of the things that my parents did to me that worked really well with all three of my kids is, as a case in point, we weren't allowed to waste our food. And so I remember I was like 4 or 5 years old, and it was time to go to church, and I wasn't eating my cream of wheat. And my dad said, so I mean, this is back to discipline. I mean, I guess the principle here is this: don't threaten. And I do this at work as well with people. I don't have to yell at you. I'm just going to tell you, if you do X, I'm going to do Y. So I go make sure I'm going to tell you what's going to happen of something I'm going to actually do. So I'm not going to say something like, you do this again, I'm going to throw you out the window. We're going to come up with something that we're actually going to do. So my dad said, you don't finish eating, you're going to eat this for lunch. And I didn't finish. So later that day, after we came home, we were having guests over, and I came home and I was hungry. I couldn't wait to eat lunch. And we had guests coming over, friends. And my dad came in the kitchen. He said, you ain't having this food. You got your cream of wheat in the refrigerator. And of course, cream of wheat, when it gets cold, that's the worst, right? Because it gets congealed and hard, and and my mother got out the potato masher, and I'm sorry, once cream of wheat gets lumpy, ain't nothing you can do about it unless you put it in the blender, and they weren't going to go that far. So I had to hurriedly gag down that cream of wheat before my friends came, so they wouldn't see me eating cream of wheat at dinner. Well, years later, my kids were doing the same thing. I did the same thing. Only happened once. And then when one time my kids were coming home from college, and they had a friend of theirs who was really a finicky eater. And I totally forgot about it. And my daughter proceeds to tell us how he she told him what I did to them.
Mm.
And I had totally forgotten about it. And her response was, only happened to us once.
What was the food they wouldn't eat?
It was oatmeal.
Okay.
So, only happened once. So there are some things that live in infamy that when it comes to discipline, you only do it once and the lesson is taught in it, and you don't do it again.
Mm. Did they eat it during their lunch, or did it take a little bit longer for them to finish the oatmeal?
Yeah, I think they did have to eat it, and that was the last time. We had to do it once. So, didn't have to yell, didn't have to swat them. I did the trick.
That's cool.
You just got to be creative.
So what do you think about, like, you said swatting? So like spanking your kids. Are you like a spanker, or you're not with spanking? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I think frequently hitting your child is basically being, what's the word that I want? A lack of creativity and more of a reaction out of you being angry rather than being thoughtful. Now, does that mean I've never spanked my kid? No, I have. One of my hobbies was keeping saltwater tanks, saltwater aquariums. And one day I walked into the bedroom and my son had taken Elmer's glue and was putting it inside of my saltwater tank. He got a spanking.
Yeah.
I had to go to the store and get special stuff to eliminate the toxicity so that it didn't kill my saltwater fish. So, but I think I think I only had to spank once or twice in all their life.
Okay.
So
you knew not to put anything in your tank going forward after that.
yeah, didn't cross his mind. So yeah. So you don't need to resort to that. You simply, and the other lesson I learned, and again, I'll apply this as being a manager of employees. Deal with problems when they're small. Dealing with them when they're small, they don't get big. So then you don't have the problem.
Yeah.
You don't sit there and think it's cute and then decide you want to get fed up and then explode. Nah, deal with it when it's little. And then when you deal with it when it's little, when it's something that's big, you tend not to have something that's big because they listen to you. Right. And that's true whether it's your kid or it's an employee. In the workplace, people would learn. You need to listen to what Dennis says because he ain't gonna yell at you. And if you decide to ignore him, you're the fool. Because he'll do it.
It's like getting the snowball before it rolls down the hill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't like confrontation. So I learned early on the best way to deal with confrontation is to deal with it when it's small. And then when people see that you deal with it when it's small, they don't test you. And if the fool does decide to, then okay. As my father-in-law used to say, up to you, free country. So that's yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
No. That's it. So that's how I dealt with discipline. And it's no different in the workplace as it is what I do with my kids.
Okay. I was just gonna ask, like, how do you and your wife handle conflicts within your relationship?
That's probably been a process that has evolved.
Okay.
She's more reactive, and I tend not to be. And as we've gone on with time. I have learned to be more clear of where I am and where I'm not. And that just puts it all on the table sooner rather than not saying something. You know, so there's two extremes, right? Not saying something and not thinking before you speak. Both of them can be harmful.
Yeah.
And so I've certainly, again, I've learned the power of words and to think about what you say before you say it. And being silent is frequently not the best strategy either. So there's a balance.
I forgot how the saying goes, but they say your thoughts become words, and words become your actions. So I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but yeah, that's interesting, man. So how have you grown as a man since you've become a father?
Well, I mean, I would have to say that again, you know, it's like the Chinese proverb, you know, a journey starts with a single step. And so that being the case, all these things that we've been talking about, it's something that you continue to reevaluate every day. It's not like you snap your fingers and somehow you're transformed. I would, you know, everybody, for example, everybody likes to talk about a legacy, right? But what people don't realize is we all are creating a legacy, whether or not we are thinking about it or not. You know, I had an experience recently, actually, well, it's not recent now. My son was asked to speak to a symposium in Hawaii, and a friend of mine sent me his remarks. And I had just been talking to a manager about my philosophy on the way that I manage employees. And so I listened to what my son was saying, and I was floored because his philosophy was identical to mine, but I had never actually said it to him before. So I sent it to this manager and asked him to listen to it. And the guy comes back and says, "Did you teach this to your son, or did you learn it from your son? Because the two of you sound identical." And I said, "I'm shocked. We've never even talked about it. But just by observing, you know, over the years of just listening and how I treat people," and he incorporated it.
You didn't learn from your words; you learned from your actions.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's powerful.
just being consciously aware. Yeah. So that totally blew me away.
So go ahead. You got one, Dr. Young?
Oh, you can go ahead.
So next question I have is actually a question I already asked you, Dennis, and you gave a real good answer. The question was, what does fatherhood mean to you? And you said guiding, learning, and growing with my wife and children. Real simple. We kind of already been kind of talking about some of these things, but can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, for example, when you're talking about guiding, it's these spontaneous moments in which your child will react, in which you take a step back and say, "No, there's another way of thinking about this." Right? So when my son might say to my wife, Mom, let Dad do whatever he wants with his money. It's his money. Guiding is stepping forward and saying, no, that is not a behavior that I support. That's not what it means to be family. Right? Another one is protecting. I didn't talk about that. One of the things that my father was really big about, which I also did, was when I would, something happened at school and it wasn't right. My dad was at the school. It did not just go by and just say, just deal with it. And that's exactly what I did with my kids. If there was some nonsense going on, the teacher heard from the Williamses as relates to, what needed to change. So from that perspective, that was and they also saw that we had an expectation of excellence of teachers. And when they did not act in that manner, we didn't just say, oh, well, whatever. We were engaging with them and basically saying that this is not appropriate. Or if somebody wanted to say, oh, sometimes your kids are just smart. No, my kids ain't any smarter than anybody else. We expect them to do their best every day. That ain't smart. That's a repetitive habit that in turn creates behaviors so that they do well. So that's protecting, that's guiding, that's all at the same time. So again, back to the same idea. The little stuff matters. You don't let it slide. You're on it. You ain't gonna, somebody's not gonna pull something over on you and think they're gonna get away with it. Nope, not happening. How's that for an answer? Does that give a bit more detail?
That's perfect. Yeah, it's good. Good stuff.
And so I know we're getting close to time. So I have one last question for you, Dennis. If you could give advice to any new father or a young father starting out, what would it be?
Engage. Don't, again, look over the little stuff. Spend the time reading with your kid. Spend the time so that your child knows that what they're doing matters to you and is not just their mother. And the other lesson I would learn that I learned the hard way, this is especially true for when young men are beginning to move into being a teenager. This idea that it's not the quantity, but the quality is nonsense. Do not, the reality that we all feel as men is the need to provide for our families and to put in the time that we need in our careers. I used to work long hours, but my dad pulled me aside at one point and said, you don't spend more time with your kid, your son, you're going to be paying the price for it. And I can tell you that when we moved here, and I moved here without having a job, and I spent the time, we saw the dividends. And so as men, as fathers, we are not to delegate the role of guiding and engaging to their mother or to anybody else, because they need us as being a partner and being fully participatory in the process, because each parent brings a special contribution to raising a child.
Excellent.
I like that. So not just being in the room with your kid, but actually be involved with your kid. Like sit
Yep.
down with them, play with them, play the video game with them, go for walks with them. Like really be there and be present.
Yep. And I didn't always do that. That's my point. I didn't always do that. And I think my daughters would specifically say that dad spent too much time working. But it's a hard balance to strike, but nevertheless, back to the earlier question, every day you're having to recalibrate. You never have this nailed down. You never do.
Sure. Yeah, good stuff, man. I want to say thank you, Dennis. It's been an excellent interview.
Yeah, we have what's called we used to call it Hall of Fame, but we switched it to Hall of Fathers. So I would definitely like to nominate this one for the Hall of Fathers. Dr. Young, is this a Hall of Fathers episode? What do you think, man?
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, cool. We're gonna raise your jersey in the rafters, man. What number would you be if you had a jersey to hang up in the rafters?
Oh shoot. I don't have one. Whatever you want to give me is fine.
I got it. Number
37.
1. Hey, 37. There you go for years of marriage. That's good.
Yeah, there you go.
It's been great.
It's great connecting with you guys, and I think what you're doing is awesome. And if there's anything else I can do to help and contribute in any way, in all honesty, by all means, let me know. Because it's frequently people learn these lessons when it's too late and they wish they could turn the clock back. Right. And I'm fortunate. There are things that I do wish I could do different, but by and large, I'm fortunate to have 3 kids that are all focused on making a positive contribution in the lives of those who they come in contact with. And no house is perfect, and so I'm certainly not. But I'm pleased to say that I'm a proud father.
I can see that, man. This has been great, Dennis. I really do appreciate it. What I like about doing this is we tend to get gems from each dad that we talk to. And I would say one of the gems I got from you was to don't threaten your kids. Say what you're going to do, then do it right away. I like that. That's my nugget I pull from this one.
There you go. Remember the phrase with President Obama, "No drama, Obama," right?
Yeah.
I'd have to say I'm one of those kind of people. I don't like drama.
No, it's a waste of time and energy. So
exactly.
Yeah. Again, Dennis, thanks again, man. Dr. Young, did you have anything else? Any other questions?
No questions. I just want to say thank you again.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitations. I'm happy to share.
Don't hang up, Dennis. We're gonna do a little post game to kind of cool down a little bit, but we're going to wrap it here. So for myself, for Sir Royce, for my prestigious colleague, Dr. Raheem Young, and also for our special guest, Dennis Williams, thanks again for listening and watching Welcome to Fatherhood Interviews, and stay tuned for further announcements.